Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to the film Blinded by the Light and Industry. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying the AQA exam specification, as this is currently one of the set films that you need to study. You don't have to have watched the film to study this particular topic, but it would be useful to know quite a lot of background information about the film, and in particular the companies that were involved in the making of it. You do need to have seen things like the website, the posters, the trailers, and their social media posts. So I'm going to be talking about all of those within this video. So the film was directed by Gurinda Chadha, who had previously worked on films like Bend It Like Beckham. So came with quite a pre-sold audience of fans. That film had a real cult following and did really, really well when it came out. It gives the film a certain element of mainstream appeal that perhaps the film might not have otherwise. Gurinda Chadha had a development company called Bend It Films. So they are the development company that started the idea for the film. Because they're a very independent, small production company, they had to get quite a lot of support from other companies. So they had support from Levantine Films and Ingenious Media, and you're going to need to know a little bit about those two companies. Levantine Films is again a very small independent companies, but they have had some major success with films like Hidden Figures. So having had some success with other films helps to increase the chances of having a higher budget and getting more recognition. Ingenious Media is an investment company, so helping you to acquire the funding for the film. Hesmondhalgh suggests that you shouldn't just create a new product without basing it on something that's existing and as successful. And that's exactly what Gurinda Chadha did here. There was an existing successful book called Greeting from Berry Park. It had a pre-sold audience of literary fans who'd read the book. The book was about a teenage Asian boy growing up and loving Bruce Springsteen music. Again, Bruce Springsteen music has a huge pre-sold audience of fans of that particular artist. So basing your film on a book which is based on music, it is again kind of hoping to maximize your profits, and it minimizes the risk because there's lots of things there that an audience will already be familiar with. Gurinda Chadha was able to make the idea happen because it had a very chance meeting with Bruce Springsteen at an event, and he kind of pitched the idea to Bruce Springsteen. Obviously has to get Bruce Springsteen's permission, because you can't really make a film about a boy who likes Bruce Springsteen music without the rights to Bruce Springsteen's tracks. So pitching to Bruce Springsteen first, who really liked the idea, and then that meant that Chadha could meet with Springsteen's management company, and because Bruce Springsteen's wife loved the film Bend It Like Beckham, I think it helped to make people agree to the idea more. So connection's quite important in the film industry. The companies that owned Springsteen's music, UMPG and Sony Music, decided to cut a deal with Bend It Films and Chadha, and basically gave them the rights to Springsteen's music for a much lower cost than other people might have been able to get. And that meant that they could go ahead with the film. If they'd have had to have paid the normal price for the rights for Springsteen's music, they wouldn't have been able to have afforded to make the film, because they wouldn't have been able to get the rights. So they were given a really great deal because potentially of how Springsteen himself really liked the idea, and because his wife really liked the director. You have to think about the context of when this film came out. It's this idea that 2019, just in the last few years, there's been a lot of upheaval within Britain and indeed a lot of other countries to do with things like ethnicity and race relations. There's been a lot in the media about refugees, asylum seekers, immigration, and particularly to do with Brexit within Britain. There's been quite a lot of xenophobia, racism that's happened. And so politically, we've been in this kind of quite difficult state of turmoil where people from ethnic minority backgrounds and people from other countries are often treated or seen quite badly, and often represented in quite negative ways in the media. So when Chadha pitched a film that was a much more positive representation of a boy from an Asian background and representing a whole culture in a really positive, upbeat way, it came at the right time for a lot of audiences. There were a lot of left-wing, more liberal audiences who wanted to show their support for people from ethnic communities. And so perhaps targeting those more culturally aware, educated audiences who wanted to embrace diversity at a time where a lot of the country was pushing it away. The film had quite a small budget of $15 million, which I appreciate is still a huge amount of money, but for a film, it's quite a small amount of money when you consider all the costs involved. They actually only made $18 million at the box office, which means that they just about made their money back. But when you consider things like distribution costs, marketing, they probably did end up making a loss at the box office. The film, being quite low budget, was shot a lot on location, had a lot of real people in the backgrounds of shots and things like that. So quite a gritty, almost social realist film, or social realist vibe to the film. And that would have appealed to a lot of audiences from that kind of fans of that genre. Because the companies involved were not vertically integrated, they were unable to do distribution themselves. So they had to partner up with other companies and they had to find ways to get the film out there to an audience. One of the best ways for indie companies to get their films noticed is to enter it into film festivals. So Bendit Films entered Blinded by the Light into the Sundance Film Festival in 2019. It was incredibly popular and lots of companies really liked it. And what happens at these festivals is that distribution companies watch these films, see the potential for making more profit and offer perhaps distribution deals. And actually Bendit Films was offered several deals by different companies at the festival. Companies were bidding all night to get the rights to distribute Blinded by the Light. And in the end, New Line Cinema got involved and they were the ones that won the bid. New Line Cinema is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers Pictures Group, obviously a huge conglomerate within the film industry, Warner Brothers. So it's a great way of getting a higher budget for your distribution. It's a great way of ensuring that your film might reach a higher, more global audience, because it means that you've got a big company involved in trying to help you distribute your product. New Line Cinema were able to secure a cinema release in August of 2019, and that was a global cinema release. So there were quite a few countries where the film was released, and that's because of the fact that the New Line Cinema is a subsidiary of a global company. Paramount Home Entertainment were the distribution company for DVD and Blu-ray, and they released that in December of 2019, so they had to get another distribution company involved in that. They then did a deal with Amazon Prime, so in 2020 it was then on Amazon Prime, which helped target a sort of maybe slightly more younger, more modern audience, and perhaps broaden the audience to people who might not have ever heard of the film before, because Amazon Prime often makes recommendations to audiences based on what they've already watched. Another distribution company, E1, got involved and distributed in the rest of the UK, Australia and New Zealand as well. So, several companies having to get involved, and that is reflective of the fact that they had this very low budget, that Bendit Films was independent and a very small company. So having to do deals with multiple other companies, outsourcing to lots of other companies in order to get their films seen by other people. Bendit Films actually placed some of the blame for their low box office figures on New Line Cinema. New Line Cinema released it at the cinemas very close to another very similar film called Yesterday. And they felt and they believed that diluted their audience. People making decisions about what films to go and see were choosing perhaps between those two films, and whereas Bendit Films felt that if the film had been released slightly later or slightly earlier, then perhaps that audience might not have had to choose between those two similar films. So release of a film is quite important, and if it doesn't go according to plan, it can really affect your box office takings. Because New Line Cinema was involved in the distribution process, there was quite a big marketing campaign for such a small film. So they had a trailer. The trailer really focused on the 80s time period. They had lots of sort of 80s soundtracks on there. They had lots of references to 80s politics in the trailer as well, references to comedy. They also included lots of quotes and reviews about the film on the trailer as well. And that helped to market the film to an audience who was seeing the trailer online and also on TV as well. They had other traditional marketing methods like posters too. Obviously, they used social media a lot. That's quite a good way of marketing your film if you do have a reasonably low budget. So they had behind the scenes featurettes on the website. They had fan polls about the 80s. They tagged Bruce Springsteen in several posts. They shared news stories that were relevant to the film's narrative. They tagged the author and director in a lot of their posts as well in an attempt to kind of target or engage their audiences too. The producers made sure to regularly retweet other posts by audiences who had seen the film and really enjoyed it, and this helped to build word of mouth promotion for the film. You can see here as well that the producers also shared ideas about how to buy tickets, and they particularly shared a post about the app Fandango. This is quite interesting because Fandango is actually owned by Warner Brothers, the same way that New Line Cinema, the distributors, are owned by Warner Brothers. So use of subsidiaries owned by the same company to cross-promote different products. So it's a great way of, constantly redirecting audiences to another site or another app that is also owned by the same company. They also reposted Black Lives Matter posts on their social media channels as well. And perhaps this is to really indicate to an audience the kind of political stance of the film, being kind of left-wing, being culturally inclusive and positive. So the choice of what to post and share and repost being quite important in the marketing of the film. Obviously, music was a really key part of the film, so they really worked hard on promoting the soundtrack, and that was through use of special offers, mentioning all the different formats it was available on, including vinyl, because obviously that's a bit of a throwback to the 1970s and 80s when Bruce Springsteen was particularly popular. Bruce Springsteen himself also promoted the soundtrack and new videos that he released at the same time, which again is great promotion for him because he's able to promote his music by also promoting the film. They had premieres in several places, including London, Luton, and Asbury Park, and also in New Jersey in America. And Bruce Springsteen actually attended the Asbury Park premiere. So targeting his fans, the use of a celebrity at your premiere is a great way of creating publicity for the film. There were multiple TV and radio interviews for the film as well to help promote it. So the writer of the book and the star of the film were on the BBC One show. They also went on BBC Radio 2 and chatted to Zoe Ball. And they also did an interview with Mark Kermode as well. Mark Kermode promoted the film, and he's quite a famous film critic. So having someone like that speak about your film on TV is a great way of promoting it to fans of kind of cultural films. They did a screening where there was a Q&A session with the crew and cast as well. And they also did multiple newspaper and magazine interviews. So a range of marketing for the film, perhaps to reflect their desperate attempts to target an audience, but also reflecting the fact that their distribution company deal enabled them to be able to do that marketing. So that was my easy to understand guide to Blinded by the Light and industry. Don't forget to check out my channel for lots of other videos that are relevant to you. But if there are any videos that you would like and I don't yet already have, please leave a little comment below and I'll see what I can do.